Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so this episode is interesting in that you guys remember Pesci, right? That guy. Yeah, he gets reintroduced in this episode, as does he get introduced alongside a new enemy that we have to fight, and we also find out what their stands are, and also the Team Bucciarati actually winds up picking a new ally in the process. So, yeah, it does start off with them in a van. They're on the way to the train station, and Baccio actually asks for Narancha to actually pass him the key that they just went through a great deal trying to retrieve, and Narancha decides to actually throw it to Baccio rather than hand it to him, and which winds up landing on Baccio's bad hand. We find out that Sticky Fingers actually wound up doing a little bit of a patch job on him so that he could actually use his hand again, and while he does remark that he just got reattached and he's still regaining feeling, he does remark that Narancha shouldn't have thrown it to him because it still hurts like hell. But Narancha points out that the fact that he actually gained it, that he actually has regained feeling in his hand, is a good thing. So he remarks that it's probably a net positive overall. At which point, Misa actually winds up. At which point, Bucciarati actually winds up picking up the key and discovers that there's actually a message inscribed in the jewel and the pommel of it, which just gives them some instructions on where they're actually supposed to go, remarking that they need to go to the water fountain near the train station with a turtle in it, and that they need to go and they need to board the train and take his daughter to Venice, and that once they arrive, they will have completed their mission, and Bruno merely remarks that that's likely that there's something at the train station that they likely need, and accurately concludes that the key is a key to whatever the hell they need to actually avoid being attacked by enemy stand users, and they do wind up finding out what it is. I'll get to that in a minute, but they do remark that whatever it is, the key is likely going to open whatever it is, and that it'll enable them to actually disappear and hide. So, with that, they then proceed to remark that they'll need to actually get to the train station, and Narancha then proceeds to wonder if that means that the boss will actually be there waiting for him, and Bucciarati remarks that likely isn't the case, pointing out that well, long story short, he remarks that the boss never actually shows their face, and he's likely only just giving them orders to go there, and isn't actually going to be there himself. And points out that as long as they're receiving orders from the boss, and they're just going to go out and do them. Meanwhile, as Bruno's actually telling the rest of the group about that, Fugo actually winds up staring at Trish for a bit, and he's in a very contemplative way, because as he's staring at her, he's wondering whether or not the fact that she has a dad that she never actually met is actually having some sort of impact on her, and he wonders how her life has actually been because of that. But then Mista actually winds up showing up and completely misunderstands what Fugo is actually doing, and remarks that he's likely staring at her because, well, she's hot. But and also remarks that he would actually stare at her breasts as well if he could, but which Fugo outright denies he's actually doing, and in truth he is. But then he winds up going they wind up going around a sharp turn, and Fugo actually winds up landing on top of Trish by accident, and at which point Mista actually pulls him back to his feet, and profusely apologizes to Trish for what happened on Fugo's behalf, but the way Mista actually apologizes, it makes it very clear. It makes it seem like Fugo actually landed on top of her on purpose to get a better look at her breasts and actually fondle her skirt and a whole bunch of other things that are inappropriate. And Fugo even points this outright to Mista, pointing out that it was indeed a genuine accident, and it's making it look like he did it on purpose, and tells Mista to actually shut up. At which point they finally arrive at the train station, and Bruno is actually monkeying around with the water fountain, and he's trying to find what it is the boss actually left for him. At which point we're introduced to Pesci, who is who shows up and is with another character that we kind of sort of met, Prosciutto, and they show up, and the two of them actually show up and notice Bruno sitting next to the water fountain trying to figure out what the key actually goes to. At which point they point out that they actually have a bit of a personal vendetta because obviously they've killed two of their members already and are understandably a little pissed off at Team Bucciarati for doing that. And Pesci even remarks that he's going to kill them, but Prosciutto even just kind of tells him off, telling him not to say things like that, and remarks that in their line of work that sequence of words actually doesn't exist because they're hitmen. Obviously, they don't say "I'm gonna kill him," and as Prosciutto puts it, they say the thought that actually comes out of their mouth is I've killed them. And with that, they quickly realize that Bruno is likely going to board the train, and quickly realize that he's going to likely try and get on board the train with whatever it is he's trying to steal. And that since he's a sitting duck, they figure they might as well corner him and try to attack him. So with that, they actually split up. Prosciutto sends Pesci onto the train to actually go and investigate and look for and try to find the rest of the crew on board while Prosciutto actually deals with Bruno personally. Meanwhile, Giorno actually pops his head out of the train and asks Bruno what's taking so long, pointing out that the train is about to leave and that he needs to actually hurry up. But Bruno merely remarks that he's trying to find where the key is going, but is noting that the key doesn't fit the keyhole next to the fountain, and is a little curious as to what exactly is going on, since obviously the key doesn't fit and it's supposed to. And he also remarks that furthermore, the hatch that he's trying to open with the key opens without one, so he's even more confused. And Bruno and Giorno quickly realizing the situation and Bruno's frustration, asks him if he could actually investigate the lock on the fire hydrant, and wonders if that'll actually do it. But Bruno remarks that the key actually doesn't work there either. At which point Giorno remarks as to whether or not they should just give up on the train and until Bruno can figure it out. But Bruno merely remarks that that's not a possibility, since obviously their enemies are closing in on them, and they need to. And if they don't find what it is the boss left for them, then they're going to be screwed, because obviously what the boss left for them is supposed to hide them from enemy stand users. So they need to actually find what is the boss actually left for them. All as Prosciutto and Pesci actually wind up closing in on them, and eventually Bruno figures it out. As he's looking at the key again, he takes note of the turtle that's actually sitting in the fountain, and notes that there's a strange indent on the back of the turtle, and realizing that this is likely what the boss left for them, he immediately scoops it up and runs on the train. And Prosciutto, realizing that Bruno's about to give him the slip, runs onto the train as well, but quickly discovers that not only are Team Bucciarati just kind of gone, but then he runs into Pesci, who was going the opposite way and was trying to corner them, which Prosciutto remarks shouldn't be possible, pointing out that obviously that Pesci should have cornered them at this point, and wonders why he's actually meeting them. And Pesci even voices his own concerns, pointing out that he wasn't expecting to run into Prosciutto before running into Team Bucciarati. And it's at this point where they quickly realize that something is going on, and proceed to start investigating. So they start investigating and looking around the rest of the train station, wondering what exactly it is that's going on. And Prosciutto remarks that it's likely that they gave them the slip, but can't actually figure out how. So he begins investigating and looking for possible things, and then tries to remember what it is he saw Bruno do before he ran onto the train, and does proceed to remark they actually did see Bruno pick something up, but doesn't know that it's a turtle. So all he knows is that Bruno picked up something blackish green. So that they then remark that there's a good chance that Bruno and the rest of his team are still on the train, and leaps back on. And with that, Pesci and Prosciutto actually wind up getting stuck on the train. So with Pesci voicing his concern about that, pointing out that he would have very much liked to have gotten off the train and had dealt with them before that, but Prosciutto merely remarks that he's investigating a hunch since he has a good feeling that they're on the train. They're just hiding and they're not going to be able to find them through conventional means. So they start poking their way around and do eventually find a door with a small slit on the bottom and note that it's possible they may have hidden there, but Pesci merely points out that that's the conductor's cabin and that it's unlikely that seven guys are hiding in there. So, but Prosciutto is determined to find them, so he asks Pesci to actually summon his stand Beach Boy, which he does. And what we find out is that Beach Boy resembles a large fishing rod, and its main ability is to reach through walls and hook things. So basically, it's just a fishing pole with a supernatural thing, and that can reach through walls, which is kind of interesting. But Pesci then uses Beach Boy to actually reach through the wall and try to probe around, looking for wherever it is that wherever it is that the rest of the group is hiding. But he senses two people in the room and eventually snags something and pulls on it, but all he really finds is the conductor, who is now hanging from his cheek from Pesci's stand, but which Prosecutor remarks isn't the right guy, so they've remarked that they likely will need to just figure it out, since obviously they're not in there, and he's realizing that may be the wrong way to go, but then remarks that the best course of action would be to have Pesci stay behind and keep an eye on the train, or keep an eye on the cabin, pointing out that on the off chance that Bruno and the others will likely have to get off the train, they'll have to come and stop the train first and foremost, which means they'll have to come into the conductor's cabin. So with that, he leaves Pesci behind to watch over everything while he goes to investigate the rest of the train and try to find Bruno and the others. And while they're actually doing that, they actually pan over to the turtle, and it's revealed that the turtle is a stand user. Its name is Coco Jumbo, by the way. That's on the wiki, but I don't think it's ever actually mentioned in the manga or anime. But in any case, what we find out is that Coco Jumbo, the little turtle that they actually wound up befriending, is indeed a stand user, and its ability, Mr. President, which is actually revealed to be the key itself, or is actually bound to Coco Jumbo's body, and when the key is actually inserted into its back, it enables anybody who touches it to be transported inside of it and inside a large presidential suite inside the turtle, which is kind of neat, and everybody can't help but admire about how the room looks, and Narancia even tests the ability out to see how he can get in and out, and he winds up getting stuck because the turtle actually wound up crawling into the shade underneath the chair where the conductor would normally sit, and he gets stuck, so he winds up pulling himself back in. But they do remark that the room also is completely furnished and isn't an illusion, which implies that the stand actually manifests a room for them to hide in, which is kind of neat. But in any case, they then remark that since they'll have to actually find a way out, they'll likely just have to hide in there until their enemies go away, and they'll be able to eventually sneak out once they get to Venice and deliver Trish there. At which point, Mr. remarks that they'll likely need to just be hunkered down for the time being, and notes that they have a fully stocked fridge full of snacks and drinks and a bunch of other things that they might need, and they just remark that the boss likely just left all of that there so that they could just stay in there, keep a low profile, and not worry about enemy stand uses for the time being. Meanwhile, Pesci is still looking for the Team Bucciarati in the cabin, despite remarking that he doesn't have Prosciutto's intuition, and remarks that he probably won't find them. And in his case in point, he's actually looking inside a cabinet inside the conductor's cabin, and remarks that it doesn't seem like they're in there. But then remarks that if that's the case, then where could they possibly? And eventually he does wind up spying Coco Jumbo, and has an idea about where they are, and wonders if the turtle has something to do with it. But before he can actually investigate further, he notes a strange mist, and quickly panics because he knows exactly what that mist is. And sure enough, when he runs out of the conductor's cabin to discover that Prosciutto has actually summoned his own stand, Grateful Dead, which we do find out what it does, but Prosciutto is clearly worried about the fact that Prosciutto has brought his stand out, and Prosciutto merely remarks that if they can't actually find the user, Team Bucciarati, then he's just going to have to attack everybody indiscriminately with his stand, and with that he proceeds to actually walk off, with Pesci following after him in a little bit of a panic. And we do find out why Pesci is actually panicking. So yeah, after a while, we do find out that we do see the group actually just chilling in the cabin inside Mr. President, and Bruno and Trish are actually drinking some cold drinks, while most of the other rest of the group are actually passed out. The guys from the last arc were actually there. Giorno, Baccio, and Fuga are all sleeping, and Narancia is starting to fall asleep. He's actually been keeping a watchful eye over the domed ceiling that Mr. President actually manifests, which is the gem on the key. But and Mr. merely remarks that Narancia seems like he's tired, and tells him that he'll actually decide to take over and keep watch over Mr. President, and in the meantime decides to actually get Narancia a drink from the fridge, and starts listing all the things they have, but Narancia is not listening, which Mista quickly picks up on, and Narancia even asks him to speak up again so that he can actually hear it. But with Mista just once again relisting the drinks, but Narancia merely just kind of sits down because he doesn't really understand what's going on, and points out that his back feels very sore. And he actually starts sitting down, and actually just kind of sits down and tries to eat a banana, also it is noted that he actually does start acting very weird, and Mista quickly picks up on it, and Mista actually winds up acting a little nostalgic. He actually starts poking at a Gardens catalog and remarking that the gardens look so pretty, and he wishes he could just sit down there and take a nap. But as he's eating the banana, or at least as he's trying to, he winds up coughing up blood, and also a tooth winds up hanging from his mouth, which is the signal that something is wrong, and Mista tries to actually go and investigate what's going on with Narancia, and he also points out that it looks like a tooth that's actually hanging from his mouth, but notes that can't actually be the case, and actually wonders if Narancia is actually feeling all right, and actually gets closer and tries to tap him on the shoulder. But what we find out once Mista actually gets within range is that Narancia has inexplicably become an old man. Which causes Mista to panic, and he starts wondering out loud what happened to Narancia, and tries to kind of figure out what's going on with him, but Narancia is just kind of complaining about the fact that his banana is hard, and remarks that he can't actually eat it, and sure enough, the banana is actually starting to crumble as well, which causes Mista to panic a little bit, and he gets louder, which actually wakes up the rest of the group, and Bruno and Trish even actually note that Mista is screaming, and quickly note that something is very wrong with Narancia as well. And they quickly find out that he is indeed getting a lot older. So is very much acting like a geriatric old man. At which point, Mista tries to tell Bruno that he thinks there might be an enemy stand attacking them, but Bruno had already since figured that out. But proceeds to wonder what exactly it is that's actually going on, pointing out that obviously there's a very big problem here, and that it's likely that they're all going to age, and that they need to figure out what's happening to Narancia. But then they try to wake up the rest of the guys, but quickly discover that all three of them have become old men, and are now also very geriatric and old. And we do find, at which point they quickly find out that they need to actually go and find the enemy stand user to actually go and take them out, because obviously this is a problem, and obviously if they don't hurry, that somebody's going to die of old age, and we don't actually see that. as Prosciutto is actually wandering through the halls of the train that they're in, a mother and her child actually wind up by becoming old, and the mom actually winds up dying of old age. As tragic as it is, we do actually see what the extreme end of that will eventually wind up being. At which point they quickly realize that they need to actually find the stand user as well, but Bruno remarks that they do need to do that, but does remark that it seems like they're actually being attacked indiscriminately, since obviously everybody's old, and also points out that the fact that they haven't been discovered yet, remarks that they're likely just using their ability to try and attack everybody indiscriminately on the train, which means that they do need to get topside and to actually start samming people, but he does remark that as long as they send somebody to actually go and deal with it, it should be fine. And then proceed to actually wonder what exactly it is, and Mista actually remarks that he could actually just use his Sex Pistols to actually go and deal with it, but gets ready to actually leave Mr. President and go deal with the enemies. But it's at this point where Giorno actually winds up stopping him and telling him to wait a couple of minutes, and that's not time yet. And while Mista actually winds up arguing with Giorno, pointing out that they're wasting precious time, Bruno actually asks him to hear Giorno out, and at which point Giorno actually relays his thoughts about what he thinks the stand is actually doing, and he then proceeds to explain. He then proceeds to give his possible explanation for what the stand actually does, which is that he does point out that obviously Trish and Bruno aren't actually old yet, which is a little bit confusing, and also remarks that and also proceeds to actually deposit a theory about how the Grateful Dead actually works, which is that it's possible that it's not that while it is attacking indiscriminately, the way it works is that it actually ages people at different rates, pointing out that obviously Trish is easily the youngest of all the people who has aged so far, and points out that all the men, even at the varying rates at which they're aging, look significantly older than she does. So from that perspective, and also pointing out what something he read is that some sort of scientific study that I read at one point, which is that women not only age slower, but as he remarks, they also keep warmer. Because according to himself, they have more fat on them, and remarks that the stand is likely using body temperature to determine who's a man and who's a woman, and also remarks that since Trish is the only woman in their group, that they're likely just trying to make all the men old so that they can just kill them silently, and proceed to then retrieve Trish once they're done. And while Mista does point out that that's a pretty good theory, he then proceeds to wonder why Bruno and Mista still look young-ish, whereas everybody else is now very old and geriatric. And it's at this point where Trish actually offers up a theory, which is that obviously all of the people who haven't aged yet, or at least not as severely, were all drinking cold things or interacting with something cold. Case in point, Mista was in the fridge at the time and was actually rooting through the fridge looking for something for Narancia to drink, while Bruno and Trish themselves had actually drinking some cold water and were keeping themselves cool that way. It also points out, and also to bring this idea full circle, notes that Narancia picks up an ice cube from her drink and holds it up to Narancia's face, and he immediately gets younger around the place where the ice touches, and Mista, quickly realizing that they need to keep everybody cool now that they know the stand's weakness, proceeds to root through the refrigerator to get as much ice as he can to actually restore everybody back to normal. But Bruno merely remarks that might not be possible, and merely tells Mista to go out and go deal with the enemy instead. And Mista actually does wind up agreeing to that, pointing out that after rooting through the refrigerator, he only finds like 2-3 ice cubes in the tray. So he quickly realizes that he'll need the ice cubes to actually go and fight the enemy stand instead of just going to go and fight them, going to go and try and fix his friends instead. And then proceeds to actually and then with that he proceeds to lift up his hand and exits Mr. President so he can go and investigate. Meanwhile, what we find out is that Pesci is actually using the same trick that the other characters are trying to use to actually avoid Grateful Dead by actually eating ice. He's actually munching on ice, and even remarks that because of that, he actually remarks that because of that, he can actually use the ability. He's actually keeping himself from aging, but remarks that what Prosciutto is doing is very dangerous and irresponsible, and remarks that there's a very good possibility that if he's not careful, he could very well age as well, and wonders what Prosciutto will do if that actually happens. Meanwhile, Mista actually winds up poking around the cabin and trying to figure out what it is he can actually do to go and find the enemy stand user. And in the process discovers the air conditioning unit and realizing that he can most likely use the air conditioning unit to actually cool off the room and keep everybody alive for longer. Goes to actually press the button. Unfortunately for him, Pesci actually wound up setting a trap inside the air conditioner using his Beach Boy, and the second Mista actually winds up pressing the button to turn it on, he winds up getting hooked by Beach Boy, and Pesci then proceeds to try and pull him through the wall, and it's at which point Mista quickly realizes that there's not one but two stand users. So yeah, this episode is interesting for a number of reasons. First and foremost, we actually find another pet animal stand user that we haven't seen in a while. Actually, we've seen like one. We've seen one in part 4, but I don't personally count that one since it's technically a plant and also a cat. It's weird. It's weird in the way that stand works. I'm not personally counting it because it's a little bit weird, but yeah, but this is like the first proper animal stand user that we've seen since obviously with Tama he wound up coming back with via his stand and is now plant. That doesn't really count, does it? But I mean, he didn't really get to use his stand when he was alive. He just kind of manifested it after the fact. This on the other hand is very much demonstrates the idea another animal stand user using their abilities to actually try and help the allies. Doesn't seem like Coco Jumbo is sentient at all. In fact, he just seems like he's just sitting there doing turtle things. But what is interesting is that his stand actually enables them to mostly hide from enemy stand users. I mean, obviously, as Grateful Dead has demonstrated, it's not perfect as stand abilities can still affect them. But if the stand users don't know where they are, they can't hurt them for the most part. Unless the ability actually affects everything around them, then there's probably not going to be much of a problem. But it is interesting that that this episode just kind of demonstrates that ability, and also it's interesting seeing how Beach Boy and Grateful Dead work. Obviously these two are stand users and assassins, so obviously they have abilities that are adept at killing. Pesci to the lesser extent because he's a very cowardly person, and his stand kind of reflects that. His stand enables him to attack people from a long distance rather than be upfront and personal like Grateful Dead would be. Yeah, it is interesting. It is just kind of interesting seeing them trying to figure out both where Team Bucciarati actually are and how to actually defeat them. Whereas and B, we actually do find out how almost immediately how the enemy stands work, and now we actually have to see the guys actually figure out how to actually deal with it. But for the time being, that's gonna do it for my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see stuff, then be sure to go check out my Twitter. I post things over there sometimes. I also retweet a lot of art, so if you guys like that, by all means, go check that out. And also be sure to check out my Patreon as well if you want to help support what I do. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks down by saying thanks. So just be sure to go check this out. Link is down in the description. And finally, if you do want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one, or some bomb video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.